Lecture: George Washington's First Inaugural Address, Foundations of Office and Nation. Good morning, everyone. Today, we're going to step back to April 30th, 1789, a day that would set the tone for the American presidency for generations to come. On that day, George Washington stood on the balcony of Federal Hall in New York City. He had just been unanimously elected the first president of the United States under the new Constitution. Robert R. Livingston, the Chancellor of New York, administered the oath of office, and with that, the presidency officially began. Washington then entered the Senate chamber and delivered his first inaugural address. This was no ordinary speech. It was the first time an American president had spoken directly to the new Congress, and by extension, to the nation, about the meaning of his office. His words reveal not only his vision for the presidency, but also the kind of leader he intended to be. Washington begins in a deeply personal way. He tells Congress that no event in his life has filled him with greater anxieties. He admits he was pulled away from his beloved home and private life, a retreat he cherished, to answer the call of his country. This is important. Washington is presenting himself not as a man eager for power, but as a servant reluctantly stepping forward out of a sense of duty. He even acknowledges his lack of experience in civil administration, stressing that he will have to rely heavily on the wisdom of others. This tone of humility was not accidental. He was consciously shaping the image of the presidency as one of service, not personal ambition. From there, Washington turns to a higher authority. He speaks at length about the Almighty Being whose hand has guided the American people through the Revolution and into independence. He calls for divine blessing upon the new government, recognizing that no human effort alone could sustain it. His references to Providence are not casual. In 1789, the memory of the Revolution was still fresh, and Washington was reminding his listeners that America's survival and success were bound up with moral character and divine favor. He also speaks of unity. Though the Constitution had been ratified, there were still divisions among the states and among the people. Washington avoids policy specifics in this address, focusing instead on shared values, the pursuit of liberty, respect for the Constitution, and the virtues necessary for self-government. By doing this, he subtly calls for cooperation between the executive and legislative branches, and between the federal government and the people. Another key feature of this speech is Washington's respect for constitutional limits. He makes it clear that the presidency is bound by law and by the will of the people. He points out that if changes are needed, the Constitution itself provides the process for making them. This is Washington, once again, modeling how power should be exercised, with restraint, with respect for procedure, and with the people's consent. The address is remarkably brief by modern standards, about 1,400 words. It would have taken less than 10 minutes to deliver. But within that short time, Washington set lasting precedents. He established the practice of giving an inaugural address. He reinforced the idea that the president is a servant of the people, not a ruler over them. He reminded the nation that government depends on virtue and unity as much as it does on law. It's worth pausing to think about the contrast with later inaugurals. Lincoln's second inaugural, for example, is a meditation on the moral meaning of the Civil War. Franklin Roosevelt's first inaugural addresses the urgency of the Great Depression. Washington's is different. It's not a rallying cry or a detailed policy outline. It's a statement of posture, a declaration of how he would carry himself in the office and how he hoped the nation would govern itself. As you think about this speech, I'd like you to consider three questions. First, why does Washington spend so much time talking about his reluctance and his anxieties? Second, how does his appeal to Providence function politically as well as personally? And third, what lessons about leadership and constitutional government can we take from this moment? Washington closed his address by once again calling upon divine guidance and expressing his hope for the happiness of the American people and the strength of the Union. It is a fitting end for a man who never saw himself as the master of the nation, but as its steward, entrusted with a sacred responsibility that he would, after 2 terms, willingly give back to the people. That spirit of humble, principled leadership is the legacy of Washington's first inaugural address, and it's why, even more than 2 centuries later, it remains one of the most important speeches in American political history.